You assume a wound is something wrong, a mark of loss, a fracture of what should have remained whole. You seek healing as if the wound were an interruption to life, an error to be repaired. Yet Shams Tabreez challenged this assumption. He said the wound is not a flaw but a disclosure. What you call pain may be truth entering awareness by force, not grace. The break you fear might be the very doorway through which the soul becomes visible. Shams did not see suffering as punishment, but as revelation, the moment when illusion fails to protect itself. If wholeness hides the truth and wounding reveals it, then what does it mean to be truly healed, to close the wound, or to see through it? You spend your life avoiding pain. You name it failure, weakness, or misfortune. You build comfort around yourself as if stability could protect you from truth. But every avoidance creates a wall between awareness and what it must confront. Shams said pain is not the enemy of understanding. It is its beginning. It interrupts the repetition of illusion. When hurt arises, the self you believe in trembles, and for a brief moment, its authority collapses. You can flee this exposure or look through it. The choice defines the quality of your awakening. When you protect yourself from pain, do you preserve peace or do you preserve ignorance? Shams saw the wound as the precise meeting point between human limitation and divine truth. He said divine love does not affirm the ego. It dissolves it. The wound is where that dissolution begins. When what is false breaks, the real is no longer concealed. He called this the unveiling, not of something new, but of what was always there, now unobstructed. Every wound for Shams was a correction in perception. It exposes where love was replaced by self-importance, where dependence on illusion had become habit. The wound does not remove truth. It removes resistance to truth. What then is pain, if not the friction between what is real and what resists it? You imagine that to be whole means to be unbroken, untouched by error, untouched by loss. But this image of perfection is constructed by fear. It defines completeness as invulnerability. Shams revealed that such wholeness is not understanding but insulation. It hides the very essence it seeks to preserve. Only what breaks becomes transparent to awareness. The self that never questions itself remains opaque, satisfied by its own continuity. Yet when that continuity fractures, consciousness begins to see through itself. If wholeness conceals and fracture reveals, then which is closer to truth, protection, or exposure? Pain does not create suffering. It exposes its source. Every wound reveals an attachment to an image, an identity, an expectation. What hurts is not the event itself, but the collapse of the structure built around it. Shams explained that the intensity of pain measures the strength of illusion. The greater the resistance to truth, the sharper the wound feels. Pain is not the voice of harm. It is the echo of misunderstanding being undone. When you listen through pain, instead of reacting to it, you begin to hear where awareness mistook illusion for reality. If pain identifies what is false, is it misfortune or revelation? There is a brief instant in every experience of pain, a gap before interpretation begins. In that instant, awareness stands without a story. Shams called this the moment of unveiling. It is the purest point of seeing, because thought has not yet reasserted itself. What you meet there is not despair, but contact with truth unmediated by self. The wound simply reveals that your identity cannot contain reality. Pain ends when this is understood, not when it disappears. The question is not how to escape exposure. But how to remain aware within it. You often call yourself healed when you stop feeling pain. But Shams warned that relief without understanding is only repression disguised as recovery. The ego defines healing as the restoration of comfort. Truth defines it as the recognition of meaning. To be healed is to comprehend, not to forget. If the wound closes before awareness learns what it was meant to show, illusion reforms in a different shape. Pain ends, but blindness continues. Do you seek healing to know truth, or simply to feel safe again? The answer reveals whether you follow comfort or awakening. For Shams, the wound was not random. It was communication. Every disturbance, he said, is a question from the real asking, where are you still asleep? Pain becomes the method through which awareness is summoned to attention. When life hurts, it is not cruelty speaking, it is precision. The real addresses you through what you resist. Shams taught that the more deeply one listens, the more clearly the voice of correction is heard. The wound ceases to feel like an attack when it is understood as a message. If every hurt is a dialogue, then silence before it is not submission, but understanding. As understanding matures, pain begins to change its significance. It no longer defines failure. It defines instruction. The mind that once asked, "Why me?" now asks, "What truth is being shown?" This shift marks the transition from emotion to awareness. Shams described it as learning to read pain instead of reacting to it. When pain becomes language rather than threat, its meaning transforms. Suffering dissolves into comprehension. Every wound now serves as evidence of awakening, not as interruption to it. What once seemed personal becomes impersonal, part of the universal correction by which consciousness remembers itself. When the lesson of the wound is understood, the wound loses its authority. It no longer divides the observer from what is observed. Shams said that the one who understands pain no longer suffers it, because awareness itself cannot be wounded. Only identification can be hurt. When the illusion of ownership ends, the pain loses its function. It does not vanish. It becomes irrelevant. The distinction between suffering and seeing disappears. You realize that what once seemed to happen to you was happening for the sake of knowing what you are not. At this stage, you no longer look for healing because there is no one left to be healed. The soul is not revealed through perfection, but through transparency, through nothing obstructing truth's passage. Shams called this the nakedness of being. To live without defense is not weakness. It is the end of illusion. You see that awareness has never been harmed, only hidden beneath layers of resistance. What remains is clarity without identity, openness without effort. The wound no longer defines you. It defines understanding itself. You began by fearing pain, imagining it as proof of separation from truth. You end by seeing it as the exact means of reunion. What was once called a wound is now seen as the real's precise method of unveiling. Shams Tabreez showed that the soul is not found by avoiding hurt, but by understanding what it reveals. The path does not move from pain to comfort, but from confusion to clarity. When both the wound and the one who feels it dissolve into the same awareness, what remains is stillness. Not the stillness of escape, but the stillness of comprehension.